like to call to order the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission meeting for August 19th, 2021. At this time, if we could have our opening comments, please.
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. For those in attendance, copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representatives to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please share your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the room. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. All speakers at the podium, please remove your face mask before speaking into the microphone. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking, but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please provide your contact information to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on all the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as courteous and concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available from the planning staff. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to the District Court.
Thank you. For our commissioners that are virtual, if you didn't see the email earlier today, if you actually leave the meeting at some time during the meeting, could you please just go ahead and interrupt whatever's going on so that we are aware of that? It's challenging enough to try to see who all is here and who isn't virtually, and if you could please let us know that you have left the meeting. It would be greatly appreciated. Staff would thank you greatly. With that, move on to the agenda. We have approval of the prior meeting minutes for August 5th. I show Bill Johnson, Nix, and Hartman being absent that day.
I move for approval, Mike.
It's been moved by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Joe Johnson to approve. Are there any questions or comments on those meeting minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. And those abstaining? Mr. Nix, I think.
Yeah,
You'd be abstaining, and Hartman and Johnson are not here. Moving on, we will go through our agenda. And the first item up is sub 2120. It'll be a final plat of Meridian 53 edition. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone in the audience that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, and is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Meridian 53 edition. Hearing none, we will take that on consent. Next, we have sub 2137, one-step final plat for Howell, first edition. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone in the audience that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Howell, first edition. Hearing none, we'll take that on consent. Next, we have South Seneca Estates edition, which is sub 210039, one-step final plat. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone in the audience that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, and is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? One-step final plat for South Seneca Estates edition. Hearing none, we'll take that on consent.
Move to approve agenda items 2.1, 2.2, and 2.3.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Warren to approve items 2.1 through 2.3, second by Mr. McKay. Are there any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously, I believe 10-0, 11 now, 11-0. Item 3.1 has been deferred to December 16th. Next, we have vacation 21-00032, vacation of a portion of a platted utility easement generally located north and west of 39th Street South and 159th Street East. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone in the audience that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, and is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Vacation 21-00032. Hearing none, we will approve that on consent. Next, we have vacation 2133, request to vacate the platter's text of an SF5 single-family residential zoned platted reserve generally located south of 29th Street, north and west of Wave Crest Circle in the Sand Crest Edition. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, and is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Vacation 21-00033, located in Sand Crest Edition. Hearing none, we'll take this one on consent. Next, we have vacation 21-00034, request to vacate a portion of platted complete access control generally located in the 4500 block of North Meridian. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Vacating a portion of a platted complete access control generally located in the 4500 block of North Meridian. Hearing none, we'll take that on consent.
Move to approve agenda items 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Warren, second by Ms. Fox to approve items 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4. Are there any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have Con 21-0001. It's conditional use to allow self-storage located at 4608 West Maple. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Mr. Nix would like to hear it. We will hear this case. Next, we have Con 21-00034, conditional use for vehicle storage yard for RVs and boats in the Goddard area of influence at 740 South, 199th Street West. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to hear this case? We will hear this case. Do we have the agent or applicant available for this case 21-34? We do, okay. All right, thank you. Next, we have Con 2135, conditional use for a daycare, SF5, located at 5401 North Sullivan. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? We will hear this case.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Is the agent or applicant online for this case?
Yes.
I thought I saw Mr. Krewall in there. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Next, we have Con 2136, conditional use to permit a rock crusher at the 1700 block of North 135th Street West. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Actually, I think we probably will hear this case because we have revised the requirements for this case. And I just need to find out if the agent or applicant is online.
We are online and we are comfortable with the revised staff conditions of approval.
Okay. Well, with that, then is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Do you want to go ahead and hear it anyway?
Mr. Chairman, if we could,
Okay.
we can do an abbreviated version just to run through what those updates are, just so that everyone will know.
Sure. Perfect. We can do that just for you. You missed it. Okay, next we have CUP 21-00043, It's a request to create Chelsea Brook, CUP, DP number 358, located at the 10,900 block of East Kellogg Drive. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Hearing none, is there anyone in the council chambers? We will hear this case. Is the agent or applicant online? Oh, okay. Next, we have zoning 21-0030. It's a zone change from general office to limited commercial, located at 53rd Street North and Meridian. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Zone 21-030. Hearing none, we will take that on consent. Next, we have Zone 2137. It's a zone change from single family to limited commercial, generally located in the 1759 South Webb Road. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Located at 1759 South Webb Road.
Yes, I'd like to hear it, please.
Okay, we will hear this case. Next, we have Zone 2138. It's a zone change from limited commercial to central business district for redevelopment, located at 929 West Douglas. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to hear this case? Nobody virtually. Is there anyone in council chambers that would like to hear this case in the Delano district? Hearing none, we'll take that one on consent.
Move to approve agenda items 4.6 and 4.8.
It's been moved by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Nix, to approve items 4.6 and 4.8. Are there any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And I have it on good authority that we have to listen to 5.1. So with that, at this point, we will adjourn we will recess the Planning Commission meeting and open up the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. First off, we have approval of the minutes from our July 22nd meeting. Absent are Blick, Gross, and Florence.
Move for approval.
Excuse me, I'd like to note a correction needed. On page 2, third paragraph from the bottom, David Foster's comments, as they're written, they're self-contradictory. The last "do not" needs to be removed in order for it to make sense.
With that change, I approve.
Okay.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Joe Johnson to approve with the change that was noted, and it was seconded by Mr. Warren. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. And abstaining,
Yes.
and Gross. Did you say Gross was, okay.
Abstaining,
So
yep.
902. Motion carries. BZA 2021-00038. It's a variance to allow 0-foot setback along Washington Avenue. Is there anyone on the commission that would like to hear this case?
Yes.
Okay, we will hear this case.
Good afternoon, Planning Commission. Philip Zevenbergen with Planning Staff. BZA 2138 is a variance request to reduce the 20-foot front setback for a limited industrially zoned property to 0 feet to allow the construction of a 60-foot by 90-foot building. It's located at 1420 South Washington. As you can see, it's a unique property in shape. It's triangular. If you want to go to the aerial, Paul, you can see on the very south side of the property there are two structures. The one closest to Washington will be taken down to make way for the new building. If you want to go to the site plan. Next. The triangle shape on the right is what the development plan will be for the construction of the new building. And you can see to the north of the building, they're going to be constructing a parking lot. The existing entrances onto the property will be removed and 2 new entrances will be put in between them for circulation purposes to the parking lot. The zoning code requires a 20-foot minimum setback for limited industrial. There are 2, if you go back to the aerial, I don't know if it's zoomed out far enough, but there are 2 properties south of this along Washington that sit closer to the property line than what the zoning code allows. They're currently non-conforming structures. You can see one of them, it's 2 properties down. The parcel lines over the aerial overlay aren't exactly correct. The building you can see is approximately 10 feet away from the property line. There's another structure down at 1450 South Washington that is built on the property line. All the other buildings along Washington appear to be built to the setback requirements, if not further back than they need to be. North of the property and east of the property is rights-of-way, as you can see. South of the property is an automobile shop. It's zone limited industrial. To the west is also limited industrial, and some of it's undeveloped, some of it's storage units, as well as an automobile body shop. Regarding the uniqueness of the property, it is a unique shape. It's triangular, which limits potentially how big a structure can be depending on where you're looking at building it. Therefore, the applicant has to cite the size of his building as far south and west on the property. They say that it would be quote-unquote impossible to construct the building to the desired size without reducing the setback. Staff concurs that the shape of the property is unique. However, it is uncertain if the proposed size of the structure is necessary in order to accommodate their use, or if it can be reduced in size a little bit in order to provide some level of setback off of Washington. Adjacent property owners, staff determines there should be no detrimental effects of a reduction of a setback. Again, the same stipulation applies as whether or not the building has to be the size that they want, or if it can be reduced in size a little bit to provide a little bit of a setback. That's going to be a reoccurring theme through these conditions. Regarding the hardship, the applicant states that if the strict application of the code would cause unnecessary hardship because it would not be able to expand their business and get a return on the investment. They have cleaned up the property quite a bit. You'll see in the site photos. I've driven by it in the past. I don't have photos of what it was in the past, but they have done quite a bit. Used to have a lot of pallets and just overgrowth and things like that. So they've spent some considerable amount of money and time cleaning up the property. Staff concurs that the strict application of a 20-foot setback would cause a hardship. However, again, whether or not the size of the building has to be the way it is, or can there be some level of setback with a smaller building. Staff agrees that development on the property would be in the public interest, and providing some level of setback reduction would further that public interest, and that a setback reduction would meet the spirit intent of the zoning code. So staff is recommending approval if the board feels that all 5 conditions have been met to grant the 20-foot to 0-foot setback reduction. If it is approved, it would be with the following conditions: that the front yard setback reduction would only apply to the newly constructed building, as shown on the site plan. They would have to get all building permits and inspections, and the resolution of the variance would be declared null and void if the board found that the applicant did not comply with the conditions. If you go forward, we can go through pictures of the property. This is looking kind of north-northeast. There are some vehicles parked on the property right now, but this is the area that had considerable debris and pallets and things in the past. It's fairly cleaned up now. Next picture. This is looking to the southeast. The metal building that you see on the right-hand side of the picture is the one that would be demolished to make room for the other building. Next picture. This is looking north along Washington. Next picture. This is looking south. The building directly in the foreground here is the one that's set back approximately 10 feet from the property line. You can see further down the sidewalk for the building that is built right on the property line, right there along the sidewalk. Next picture. And this is looking kind of catty-corner to the southwest at buildings across the street. Next picture. And that's it. I can stand for any questions.
Just to confirm, the building with a 0 setback would be right on the sidewalk?
Correct.
Okay.
Or close there too. Don't know exactly where that property line is, but most likely right on the sidewalk.
That was your concern?
Well, and if the agent is here, I'd like to know if they've really considered, for instance, taking part or all of that existing building off in order to have the same size building but meet the setback requirements, or building a building that's not perfectly rectangular and wrapping it around that existing building. I mean, there are other solutions than putting it right on the 0 setback line. Have they even been considered?
Yes, but
If-
he's gonna use that existing building.
If we could, when there'll be an opportunity, I will let you respond at the appropriate time. Just keep that question ready for your presentation. Thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes.
Mr. Chairman, one more comment from the staff perspective. I've been advised by the law department that in our recommendation, that condition number 3 should be removed because this is a variance. That's a condition that we typically include, but because of the nature of the variances, it should be removed from this recommendation. So number 3.
Number 3 on the recommendations. Okay. All right, are there any other questions for staff at this point? Hearing none, if we could have the agent or applicant, and if you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 10 minutes.
West 13th. The owner is using the existing building as part of his expansion for his body shop. So if we can't push the building further west because we'll cut off fire access on the east side of the lot.
Okay.
I mean, we may not be right on the sidewalk. We'll have to, once we get it surveyed and figure out exactly where that existing building is, there might be some space between the sidewalk and our building.
Okay. Are there any other Are there any
We-
questions?
We've already, you know, the owner wanted a 100-foot building. We're down to a 90. So we've already, I mean, he's had to compromise some. That's just,
Okay. Are there any other questions for the agent? Hearing none, is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to comment on this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to comment on this case? Anyone virtually that would like to comment on BZA 21-00038? Hearing none, we will bring it back to the commission.
Move we approve, subject to staff comments with deleting item number 3 in the recommendation.
Second.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. McKay, second by Mr. Florence to approve, removing requirement number 3 under the recommendations. Are there any questions on the motion? Yes, Mr. Johnson?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to abstain from voting on this.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, in my motion, should it be that the elimination of number 3 was
Yes,
legal's recommendation?
there you go. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Oppo- Opposed, nay, and abstaining.
Yes.
So the motion carries 1101? 1101. All right. Seeing no other cases on our BZA agenda, I will adjourn the BZA meeting and reopen the Planning Commission meeting. First case, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is Matt Williams for Planning Staff. This is Con 2021, number 1. The applicant is requesting a conditional use for a warehouse self-service storage on a roughly 1-acre property zoned to limited commercial. The property is located northeast of West Maple and South Anna. The property is currently developed with a car wash that is not in operation. The applicant intends to demolish the existing car wash and construct a 14-bay self-service storage warehouse. An existing masonry wall is located along the north property line abutting the residential zoning. The applicant intends to maintain this screening. If we can go to the next slide. The Unified Zoning Code requires consideration of a conditional use for self-service storage in the limited commercial zoning district to be subject to 19 supplementary use conditions, and these are all listed in your staff report. The agent for the applicant has confirmed that the site will be in compliance with all of these conditions except the requirement for a resident manager. The applicant states that due to the fundamental difference between flex space and traditional self-service storage, a 24-hour on-site manager will not be necessary. An on-call management number will be provided in the office if anything is needed. This supplementary use regulation can be waived by the governing body. Due to the residential development located adjacent to the subject site on the north and on the east, the applicant, as required, has submitted architectural designs. The architectural designs are for review and recommendation by the planning director to the MAPC on whether or not the architecture is compatible with the surrounding development in the area. The attached letter from the planning director is included in your staff reports, and the planning director found that as pertaining to the architecture, that the architecture is not compatible with the surrounding development. If you take a look at that letter, it was found that the applicant's plans indicate the existing masonry car wash will be demolished and replaced with a metal self-storage warehouse The warehouse will have 7 bays to the north, looking at the residential properties, and 7 bays to the south along Maple. You might pull up that site plan as well. Surrounding development consists of residential, commercial, and religious/educational uses. The exterior building materials primarily consist of brick, wood, and ephes in the area. There is one metal building located directly south of this building. That is an accessory use to the church on the site, and the building is screened from West Maple Street with a solid screening fence and then some trees. The recommendation is that the applicant submit new architectural designs for review and approval prior to the issuance of building permits. Colors used in the painting of the building exterior should favor earth tones, and materials should include masonry, brick, and/or ephes to make sure it's compatible with the surrounding development. The director also found that adequate screening is being provided on the site. Around the site, we have B multifamily to the north, and it's developed as a group home. South of the site, there's a mix of limited commercial and single-family residential, and that includes Town West Mall and a church. The property to the east is zone limited commercial and includes some multifamily residential, and then west of the site is limited commercial, and that's developed as commercial. The requested conditional use would continue to allow the property to be in conformance with our policies and plans. The 2035 future growth map identifies the area as appropriate for new residential, and in that plan it states that that area is likely to have pockets of commercial use that will be developed. Based upon the information available, staff is recommending that the request be approved with conditions, and those conditions include that all supplementary use regulations shall be complied with except for 17. No residential manager should be required for the site. The applicant shall submit an updated site plan for review and approval by the planning director. The revised site plan should include all requirements as stated in the supplementary use regulations. And this is a change from your staff report, but we're going to ask that site plan include the existing trees on the north and west side of the property. The staff report stated that all of the trees should remain, but after speaking with the applicant, it's clear that some of the trees on the east side of the property are going to have to be removed for the building that's going to be placed there. The applicant shall also submit a landscape plan and architecture designs for review and approval, and that is to go along with a recommendation that the colors used in the building should favor earth tones, and that the exterior materials should primarily consist of masonry, brick, and ephes. And go through some of these photos here, if you go to the next slide. So this is the current building right now that will be taken down for the new structure. This is looking north. Next slide. This is the brick residential property to the east. Next slide. This is looking south across from the property. That's Town West Mall in the far back. Next slide. Some commercial to the west. Next slide. This is the group home site to the north. Next slide. And then this is that metal building across Maple Street. And then if you go to the next slide, we can look at some of the architecture from around the area. So this is, if you look at the arrow on the right side, this is starting with west of the property, and I'm going to go down the street and then on the south side. So here's some commercial. You can see that there's masonry and probably ephes. Next slide. Some commercial to the west. Next. This is the brick residential building to the east. Next slide. Some homes that are the typical character of the area. Some stone and some siding. Next. Commercial building. Next. And on the south side, we've got the church. Next. A school that I believe that is attached to the church. Next. Here's that metal building showing the screening and the trees just south of the subject site. Next. And here's a picture of Town West across the street. So I'd be happy to answer any questions about this case.
Yes, Mr. Nix?
I got a couple. So, does the applicant own the lot to the west, the vacant lot to the west? Do you know?
I will let the applicant talk about that. I don't know off the top of my head.
The metal building to the south? So we're saying that we don't want to approve a metal building here, but if we put a wood fence in front of it, it'd be all right, just like across the street from the church? Am I understanding that right?
Well, I think the requirements for self-service storage, the conditional use and the limited commercial require it to be compatible with the surrounding architecture. And so I did want to point out that there is a metal building across the street, but primarily the surrounding architecture is not metal building.
Years ago, I rented space just south of Lawrence Elementary School. If you go back east on Maple, and if you look at that property today, it's nothing but a chain link fence that goes right up to the sidewalk with I don't know how many different storage units there. So do we have are we applying a different standard as you go back to the east than we are to the west? Is the way I understand?
I would have to look at that case. I'm not sure if that was limited commercial and they had to go through the same zoning process to get that case, or if that was a use allowed by right.
Yeah, I don't know about the case. I'm just
Right.
saying that if you look at that property, however that developed, it looks substantially different than what's proposed here, I think.
Yeah.
As far as changing the architecture.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, for the conditional use for this case, we're required to take a look at that, and you guys can accept that or make a different recommendation.
Well, my other observation is that, I mean, we have photographs of various and sundry buildings in that area, but as I drive along there, I'm pretty sure there's some metal buildings where we have businesses located as well. Pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, yes, Mr. Warren?
Real quick question. On the standards that are listed in the report on page 2, number 9 talks about all lights shall be shielded to direct light into the established area and away from adjacent properties. Who has the final say on that? I mean, that I assume when the drawings come up, that'll be a part of the drawings. Who's got the say on whether or not the lighting is adequate?
Well, I guess I would say that the applicant has said that they would follow that. If there is a complaint in the future that shows that that's not occurring, then that would be an issue that they're required to follow for this conditional use, and we could remove, pull that at that time.
Yeah, Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, basically, they could be required to, we could say that they need to be required to do an engineered drawing that shows the light level at the property line being 0.
Matt, I think you touched on this. What's causing the architectural requirements is the underlying zoning, and this being a conditional use on top of the underlying zoning.
That's correct, yeah.
So if let's say it was single-family residence, would a conditional use require this same type of underlying conditions that would require the architectural screening?
Single family, I'm not sure, this use wouldn't be allowed in single family, but for example.
I mean, if it was zoned something other
Right.
than
JR
LC.
JR might be able to correct me, but I believe this use is allowed by right in general commercial. Yeah, so this is allowed by right in general commercial, so if they had gone the zone change, they would have been allowed this by right. To get the conditional use in limited commercial, they're required to abide by these recommendations, these requirements in the zoning code.
Okay, all right. Yes, Mr. Wadle?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if it would help, I think part of the discussion that I'm sensing here is a discussion about the appropriateness that the applicant has come in with the proposal for a metal building. There are other metal buildings in the area, but we also know that some of the other buildings in the area show stone or show brick facade for at least a portion of it. And so what I would suggest is that in the staff report, we've made the condition that at least some type of these materials should be included. We're not saying that the whole thing needs to be that way. And we've actually had a follow-up conversation with the applicant, which, we've talked about perhaps things like a wainscot for the first 3 feet or something like that to kind of break up the building a little bit. And that actually reflects some of the residences that you'll see to the north where it's not the entire facade that's done out of brick or out of stone, but rather just the 3 feet to kind of give it different elements that kind of break the building up a little bit more.
Does that help, Mr.
Yeah.
Nix? Okay. Are there any other questions for staff at this point? Hearing none, is the agent or applicant? Welcome. You have, if you could give us your name and address, Levi, and you have 10 minutes.
All right, good afternoon, Commission. It's Levi Bond with Iron Horse Development. We're at 142 North Emporia Street. I'm the agent for applicant on this one. It's Tom Schmeidler. He is not in town, so he cannot answer questions, but I'd be happy to take any. In general, we're in agreement with staff comment. As Scott said, we've had some further conversations about the architecture. That is the only point that we were going to talk about. We proposed to him the idea of a wainscot of some sort on the front to break it up, but still primarily a metal building. We think it's suitable for the area. There are some in the area. The dentist's office down the street is metal. And if you look at the nail place just 2 sites down, it's metal back to the residential all throughout that neighborhood. There's metal buildings. I don't really need to go through a presentation, but I have pictures if you guys want to see them. Be happy to answer any questions. Oh, I guess I should say the only request is that we amend the architecture requirement to just need a brick or stone or some sort of architectural wainscoting on it. That's what we'd request.
Okay. Do we have any questions for the agent? Thanks, Levi.
Thank you, guys.
Is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to provide testimony for this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to address this case? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the commission for action.
Move to approve per staff recommendations.
I'll second that. I have one question too.
You have a question? Okay.
In the report, they said that the director would be the final say on the decor of the exterior. I believe that the gentleman said that he would approve just one thing. It may be more than just that one thing that they end up coming up with. Right?
That is correct, sir.
So the final say has to be with them. I just didn't want to get confused. We're passing it with just a wainscot across the front.
Right, right. And Levi, you were a part of that.
So our discussions with staff is that we'd still submit a new architectural plan and an updated site plan. We would show the color that we'll paint it. It would be those earth tones that the director recommended, and then have a wainscot or some sort of architectural material. We just wanted it reflected in the minutes that we're going to do some sort of architectural on the building to break it up.
And I think there was also some comment about the lighting on the property.
Yeah, and if I could let you guys know, it's probably mostly going to be wall packs on that, and that'll be shown on the commercial building plans when it comes in, so that will be reviewed. I don't know if that would require a photometric plan. I've never done building plans, just civil plans, so.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion on the floor by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. McKay. Are there any questions on the motion?
So I just want to clarify that that includes
The architectural?
the architecture change, and then also that we're changing on condition 2, it states that the site plan should also specify that existing trees will be maintained. We just want to put be maintained on the north and west sides of the property.
All right. However they can be maintained, yes. Yeah. Okay, is that good? All right, all those, any other questions on the motion? Everybody clear? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we have conditional use 210034.
Good afternoon again, Philip Zevenbergen for the record. Con 2134 is a conditional use request for a vehicle storage yard on a property zoned RR. The storage yard would be for RVs and boats. The property is located at 740 South 199th Street West. This is at the, basically just south of the corner of 199th and West 6th Street, which is West Maple. If you were to drive that all the way out to Goddard, it is in the Goddard influence area. The total site is 4.64 acres. However, the conditional use only applies to the 10,000 square foot area that the vehicle storage yard would occupy. So you can see that on the plan in front of you, there's a 4.64 acre site, and then the black box is where the conditional use applies to, which is where the vehicle storage yard would be. Vehicle storage yard would be 50 by 200 foot, and it would be accessed, if you want to go to the aerial, it would have access off of the existing driveway, which would be extended to the rear of the property to provide access to the storage yard. Zoning code defines a vehicle storage yard as keeping the outside of an enclosed building for more than 72 consecutive hours of operable vehicles, boats, trailers, wrecked vehicles, things of that nature. With a conditional use in rural residential zoning, it comes with supplemental use regulations for the vehicle storage yard, which govern location, area, use setbacks, paving, screening, lighting, and noise. Overall, the applicant's plan is in compliance with the location in the area, and that is behind the principal structure, and the area is limited to 10,000 square feet since the property is over 2 acres in size. The applicant will have to do some updating to the screening on the property. You can see on this aerial that there's a pretty dense hedgerow on the north, and that provides adequate screening. However, the east and the south property lines do have some gaps in the hedgerow that would need to be updated either along the property line or somewhere in between the storage area and the property line, either with vegetation per the code or a 6-foot solid screening fence at a minimum. The driveway to the storage yard as well as the storage area itself would have to be paved with an all-weather surface according to the code. If lighting facilities are provided, they have to be to the standard. The noise has to be compatible, with the exception that there are no allowed outdoor speakers or amplification systems permitted, and that's part of the supplementary use regulation. If we go back to the zoning map, the surrounding properties are all zoned rural residential. If you remember, just recently, the property to the east of this was just recently approved for a vehicle storage yard for a 10,000 square foot area. It did get approval by the Board of County Commissioners back in July, I believe. South 199th Street is a paved 2-lane county arterial with open ditches. Water is provided on site, and there's a sewer lagoon that was shown on the aerial. Conformance to the comprehensive plan, this area is in the urban influence area for Goddard, so we passed the buck to them to say, what do you guys have to say about this? Since it's in the urban growth area, this case was heard by the Goddard Planning Commission on August 9th. There was 2 individuals who spoke against this case at that meeting. I believe they are here today as well. With the testimonies of the inappropriate nature of the use and the fact that it is now turning into a growing type of use with the approval of the vehicle storage yard to the east that was just recently approved. I'm sure they can provide additional testimony as to what their concerns are for the property. Overall, the Goddard Planning Commission provided a recommendation of approval 5-0 to the Board of County Commissioners. Staff is recommending approval subject to conditions. These conditions are exactly the same as the conditions that were applied to the property to the east of it. Briefly, number 1 is that it complies with the supplementary use regulations, that the vehicle storage yard would be for operable boats and wrecked vehicles only, and that in no case would there be any sales, repair work, dismantling, or mechanical servicing of the equipment or vehicles on the site, or the storage of those materials or supplies. Number 3, most importantly, that it is the conditional use is for 10 years only. However, at such time, if they would like to extend it, they can submit an administrative adjustment for 5-year periods of time consecutively after that. If it is not extended, then the conditional use ceases. The storage area and the entrances and exits would have to be paved with an all-weather surface. The applicant needs to provide a revised landscape and screening and site plan to show where the additional screening is going to be, and that all local federal regulations need to be followed. Findings for our recommendation: all the properties, again, are zoned rural residential. This is a use permitted by conditional use, understanding that out in the country, certain uses are a little bit more acceptable than they would be necessarily in a city. And that's why there's supplemental use regulations in order to help protect the surrounding properties from possible negative impacts of the use itself. And so that basically governs what our findings are, is that it can be appropriate subject to the supplementary use regulations, which are there to mitigate possible negative impacts on other properties. As I mentioned before, the Goddard Planning Commission heard it and recommended approval 5-0. If we go through the presentation, I can take you through the pictures of the site. It's the site plan. Again, you can see where the storage yard will be in the northeast corner and where the drive will be extended. One of the things with vehicle storage yards out in the county is making sure they're not over or on top of any type of sewer. This one has the lagoon. The lagoon is there. It's nowhere near their sewer treatment. Next photo. This is looking at the site. This is the drive in the existing house from 199th Street. Next picture. This is on site towards the rear looking north. You can see the dense hedgerow along the north property line. This is approximately where the storage area will be. Next picture. This is looking south towards that property line on the south. You can see there are some places where there needs to be some additional screening, specifically further to the west. Next picture. This is looking to the east. Again, you can see there are some places where some of the screening needs to be beefed up along that property line. Next picture. This is looking back towards 199th Street, where there would need to be some work on this drive to get back there to make it up into compliance regarding the all-weather surface. Next picture. This is looking to the northeast at the property, right at the corner of 199th and 6th. Next picture. This is looking to the northwest at the agricultural field across 199th Street. Next picture. And this is looking to the southeast at the edge of the property, as well as to the property south of it as well. I believe that is the last one. Yep, and I can stand for any questions.
Do we have any questions? Yes, Mr. McKay.
Silly question, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Under number 5, you got paving.
Mm-hmm.
Then you say it can be an all-weather road, which is any, is that a misleading, say it's gotta be paving and then say they can have an all-weather road?
Well,
Or is that just a
paving
classification
defined
you
by
created?
the, or all-weather surface,
Is not paving.
I'm sorry, which number?
5 in your page.
Well, that's the supplementary use regulation. The storage area and all access drive shall be properly surfaced with an all-weather surface. I didn't put paving in there. That's the way the zoning code is written. So it says,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah. The supplementary use regulations has a condition for paving, but they allow all-weather surfaces as a version of paving.
Any other questions by the commission for staff? Hearing none. If we have the agent or applicant, if you could come forward, please. State your name and address for the record, and I'll let you have 10 minutes, Mark.
Thank you. Mark Savoy, Savoy Company, Land Surveyors, agent for the applicant. We're in agreement with staff comments and the property owner, Mr. Alexander.
Can you speak in the microphone?
Sorry about that. Mr. Alexander's very eager to plant additional trees along those tree rows or have some transplanted to provide good screening on that. He's very interested in keeping that screening, a solid screening. We placed the location, and this is a permanent location, it can't be changed, completely to the north of this to also kind of mitigate any turmoil with activity of somebody coming and picking up their boat or their RV. And he's been very concerned about that, doing it the proper way. Won't make any comments about the property to the east, and I know that's caused some heartache for the neighbors to the south, but we're certainly going to try to avoid any kind of similar situation like that, and are very concerned about their concerns and want to try to comfort them that we're going to try to do the right thing. So anyway, I don't know if any other screening, he didn't really want to do any 6 foot, 8 foot board fencing or anything like that for screening. I mean, that would be to him more offensive than using natural vegetation. So that's why he wants to move some trees there. But anyhow, he's willing to meet all the requirements, and we tried to set it up to meet all the requirements from the get-go.
What are your plans? You know, Mr. McKay brought up an interesting point about the access back to the storage area.
It's not going to be a paved surface. It will be all-weather, which can be, just like a lot of county roads or drives, sand, gravel, something that's stable, that can be maintained and not turn into a mud hole. So, yeah, it will not be paved. He's not planning on paving an asphalt surface out there.
So,
Yes, Mr. McKay?
Mark, they've been working on, the fire department's been working on the situation about ingress and egress in and out of private property like this.
The only thing they typically worry about is where your living structure is and if they can get there to fight that fire, of a structure fire.
So you're saying that
there hadn't been any concern about being able to get back to the boats and RVs.
Okay. Any other questions at this point? Seeing none, thank you. Open it up for public comment. Is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to address the commission? You can come forward, please, and give us your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Vicki Strelo. I live at 838 South 199th Street West. We were here a couple of months ago opposing a vehicle storage yard that adjoins our property. Now we're back here again with the second vehicle storage yard. Section 3D6MM of the Sedgwick County Zoning Code states conditions for the application. Only lots developed with a residence as the principal structure are eligible to apply for a conditional usage permit. That's from page 162 of your zoning code. The code clearly states residence and not dwelling unit. A residence is required in order to operate a vehicle storage unit. This next information comes from our attorney. The Wichita-Sedgwick County Unified Zoning Code does not define residence, nor do the Wichita-Sedgwick County Codes of Ordinances. The zoning code is to be construed in accordance with its purposes. Words and phrases shall be constructed according to the common and approved usage of the language. Words not defined in the code shall be given their common ordinary meanings as the context may reasonably suggest. Now, the Kansas statutory construction provision defines residence as the place which is adopted by a person as the person's place of habitation to which, whenever the person is absent, the person has the intent of returning. The standard dictionary definition of residence is the act or fact of dwelling in a place from some time. When a person eats at one place and sleeps in another, the place where the person sleeps shall be considered the person's residence. Merriam-Webster, both the legal and the ordinary definition, including that a person must live in the structure for it to be a residence. The zoning code also defines dwelling unit as a building or portion of the building that contains living facilities for not more than one family that includes provisions for sleeping, cooking, eating, and sanitation. A building is a dwelling unit regardless of whether a person currently resides there. The choice to use the word residence rather than dwelling unit in section 3D6MM indicates that a person must live there for it to be a principal structure on the lot. Now, with respect to Mr. Anderson's property, Mr. Anderson does not live there. No one does. And this application should not be denied because only properties with a residence as a principal structure are eligible. Now, the Goddard Planning Commission met last week and they approved his application, but they were not given this information. So
Ma'am, your 3 minutes are up.
I'll wrap it up.
I'll give you
Yeah.
another minute.
Thank you.
You bet.
The residence is empty, and I would like the council to ask Mr. Alexander if he's living there. And we believe this is against the spirit of the zoning regulations, and for you to have a vehicle storage yard, the owner needs to be living there. Now, a quick update on the last vehicle storage unit application that you approved. Mr. Hedinger was given till July 30th to comply. He has not complied. He has not put a road in. And this is the screening that we got from Mr. Hedinger. So he moved this school bus 2 feet off of our property line. He's non-compliant, and the only recourse that we have is to take him to court and sue him for him to comply. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions of the speaker? Okay, thank you. Yes, Mr. Nix, did you have something?
No, I was just looking at Mr. Cox and wondering if he wanted to comment.
Chairman, Commissioners, good afternoon. J.R. Cox, Metropolitan Planning, for the record. This is in the county. It would be handled by the county. I believe there is an active case, so I'm not going to discuss it. I won't be directly handling it unless I need to be involved, but I think action is going to be taken against that particular applicant.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else in the council chambers that would like to address the commission on this? If you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name's Jim Strelo. I live at 838 South 199th Street. I'm the husband of my wife just spoke. I used your statement of purpose for the zoning commission as my outline for what I'm going to talk about. One of the bullets, or one of the points they first state, is the implementation of adoption of a long-range plan. The long-range plan for this area right there has always been residential dwellings right there. There's never been any commercial area or anything else like that. What we have now is we have some people trying to step outside of it, use the conditional storage parcel as a way of performing a commercial property in a residential area. This is not in the spirit of what the area was. The spirit of the area has been that way for 30 years. We've lived there for 30. The people around us have lived there for 40 years. If they want to run a commercial venture, I would suggest that they go get commercial property to run commercial ventures off of, not some area in a residential area. Everywhere around there is residential. Since the first storage yard was implemented, he operated that area for about a year and a half before he was brought in compliance with it right there. We've had more theft and people going off our property more in the last year and a half than we have in the last 30 years we've ever been there. just because there's more traffic in the area and more people are taking advantage of it. I don't think it's going to get any better with the next one going in right now. Give you a little history of the area right there. 15 years ago, there was a developer out there that wanted to come in and put luxury homes in 1/4 mile away. He did his site work, he did the groundwork and everything else like that. And then KG&E or Westar came in and put power lines along on 199th Street. The developer quickly backed out of the deal right there because he could not see the point of it. One small thing made a big difference in what the developer did. When the developer backed out, it affected us because we backed out of our plans for the property also. You might remember that about there at that time.
Sir, your 3 minutes are up. Would you need another minute to kind of wrap things up?
The only thing I have to say is I think this is the wrong place, wrong time, and wrong area to put this in. We were here. We have the people around us, the Eilerts, which are 600 feet to the east, oppose it. The Wilsons, which are right joining to the north, oppose it. We oppose it to the south. Don McCullough, which is to the west, they oppose it. All the neighbors around there virtually oppose this and the other vehicle storage unit right there. And I can't understand why we're even talking about it right now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for the speaker? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony today. Is there anyone else in the council chambers that would like to address the commission on this? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this? Anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the agent for rebuttal.
Mark Savoy, agent for the applicant. I do know that the property was just recently purchased by Mr. Alexander. My assumption was that he's planning on living there, but I don't know that for a fact, so I'll have to check with him about that. I know he plans on the house being occupied as opposed to unoccupied. Other than that, I don't have any more information in that particular vein.
Okay.
If you have any other questions.
Do we have any other questions for the agent? Mr. Nix?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay, Mr. Florence?
Do the agent know how long that property been vacant?
I have no idea. He just purchased it within the last 2 months.
Did you catch that, Terrell?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. And Mr. Nix, you had a question?
But you said you were going to purchase additional trees to fill in the gaps. You got any idea how many you'd need and how big
Well,
they
he's
would
got
be?
quite a few trees there. He can move some. He can pinch some off that north line and move them. He may have to have some brought in. But I know that was his plan all along, because that was one of the first things we talked about, was screening.
Well, maybe you can do it cheaper than what I was thinking. I thought he might have to bring them in. That's an expensive project when you do that if they're large trees.
It could be a little expensive.
That's all I'm saying.
Probably, maybe not any worse than building an 8-foot board fence, maybe, with the cost of lumber right now.
Any other questions for the agent? Hearing none, thank you. And we'll bring it back to the commission for action. Did you have, yes, Mr. Dool?
Just a comment, it appears to me on this aerial view that there are a number of vehicles stored in the area on other properties, particularly to the east. Just a comment.
Yeah, that's the vehicle storage yard that was recently approved.
Well, and then I noticed one just to the east of that property, there, down there in the southwest corner, and then in the northwest corner of that, of the two properties to the east of the one that you were referring to, there's some storage there. I don't know if those are personal vehicles or not. I don't know if there are any cases on that for conditional storage, but I'd noticed that too, Bob. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Mr. Warren.
Got a staff question from the standpoint, the first speaker talked about occupancy a lot. What are the, I'm curious as to how we deal with that. Is that, was their assessment accurate? And is that a condition that we put on, that we can put on, or how does that operate?
And Wagner's back there.
Yes, sir. Excellent question. And in fact, I was going to defer to Mr. Wagner.
Okay. I didn't know if you'd seen him back there or not. Mr. Wagner?
Yes, Justin Wagner,
Oh, okay.
Assistant County Counselor. Commissioner Warren, as to your question, I did look at the zoning code. The definition was brought up about vehicle storage yard and rural residential. There's a lot of focus on the definition of residence. In this case, it's my opinion that this is eligible for vehicle storage yard and rural residential. The language says only lots developed with a residence as the principal structure are eligible to apply for conditional use in this case. This lot has been developed with a residence, in my opinion. I don't think there's a requirement that it's occupied at this moment. I think, the code doesn't go that far, get that specific. It does appear in the context of the statute. The term residence talks about if it's been developed that way. Clearly, in my opinion, it has. So I think it is eligible. Obviously, there's all the golden factors you'd have to consider in terms of the use and the appropriateness for the area. But do you have any other questions on that?
That was my primary question, so thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? Hearing none, yes.
Can I ask a question of the applicant again? If there's no one occupying the residence, are there plans for some type of security mechanism on that property? If I can understand how that could attract activity that would be difficult to detect if you didn't live there.
My assumption's been that somebody's going to live there. I'll have to ask him specifically in regard to that.
So there's no extra security detail or equipment planned for this?
Not that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What is your wish here? Looking for a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Warren to approve, second by Ms. Foster. Are there any questions on the motion? Any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay.
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 Looks like it's passed, but it's Commissioners Miles, Fox, and Florence are in the negative. Okay. Thank you. Next, we have agenda item 4.3, conditional use. Kathy?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a daycare facility general for youth that are in the foster care system but have not been assigned to a permanent foster home. And the applicant is requesting that they be allowed to operate the daycare from, if you look at the conditions that staff recommended, the activity, I'm sorry, back up. Staff is recommending denial of this because of the impact to the neighborhood. I've had put in several documents into your packet, some from the police department. I believe you have some information in there from the environmental services, and also a packet of information that was sent to us from the surrounding neighborhood. This is an appropriate, according to the Unified Zoning Code, would be an allowable use with the approval of a conditional use in single-family residential. These types of daycare programs are similar to kindergartens, nursery schools, daytime programs operated by public or private schools and institutions of higher learning. Churches, we have churches that operate daycare facilities, that type of thing. These children range in ages from 9 to 18. The number, maximum number they're requesting is 10, and there are 4 staff people that would be on site, depending on the number of children at the location at any one time. And of course, we're now back in school, so that's going to vary. They requested hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. The issue with this is that the police have the city has adopted a nuisance ordinance, and they have what they call trigger events. And since the last part of April, when I got the last figures from the police department, there had been 31 911 calls to that, with a wide variety of officer in trouble, needing assistance, runaways, assault, different things like that. So this is going to negatively impact the neighborhood with these types of activities going on. Also, it's going to impact the community facilities because of the hours that would be spent or have to be allocated by the police department to answer these calls, and these would be from North Patrol. Let's see. It does, the application does comply with what the comprehensive plan states with, it's zoned residential, it's going to remain residential. It would have a conditional use for the daycare facility. The house was vacant for approximately 3 months when the applicant purchased it, and then began operating the daycare. And there were complaints from the neighbors that caused the city code enforcement folks to go out and issue a warning. And I believe you have a letter in your packet showing that a formal violation notification was given. Would you show you've got the zoning up, thank you. So the dark outline is where this property is located. It's just a little over an acre. The notification area was 350 feet. And so as you can see, this is in an established residential neighborhood. The houses range from mid-30s up through like 1972. Most of the residents there are long-term residents. You have limited commercial over at the corner of 53rd and Seneca, and then there's a special use there at the corner of Legion and 53rd on that one lot that's been there for quite some time. But As you can see, it's all residential. Let's see. If in the opinion of the Planning Commission, that you would wish to find alternate findings and not take the recommendation of staff to deny, you have in your staff report a list of 7 items that you would need to adopt, or a version thereof, to approve the item, the request for the conditional use. And I would stand for.
Hey, Kathy, as part of the staff presentation, I just have a quick clarification to ask. What hours, I think you mentioned 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.?
Right.
But in the staff report, I see it lists till 8 a.m. to 10:30.
Oh, you're right. Forgive me. The 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. is the recommendation, that the alternative recommendation. The hours that it is currently operating is from 8 until 10:30. Thank you, Scott.
Do we have any questions for staff at this time?
I have one question. I don't have it in front of me, but we did get I guess it was a petition from the neighborhood signed by quite a few people.
Yes.
And when I looked that over, I found it kind of curious that I believe I'm correct, the residents to the east didn't sign it. Just curious.
Can you go through the slides, if you will, please? The maps. And I believe the person that submitted the protest, they have a map that they colored showing which residents opposed the recommendation, and I think they're here to talk about that. So I mean, I don't know why they would not have signed it, but there was a significant number that sent in a protest petition that was passed around through the neighborhood. These folks did appear at the DAB 6 meeting last night and gave their opinions on why they didn't want the daycare there. The DAB voted unanimously to approve the recommendation of staff to deny the conditional use.
Yeah, I guess a couple of things that concern me the most about this is, one, it's been operating non-conforming to the zoning, but secondly, the number of calls that have come, the 911 calls, and then the follow-up letter, the trigger events that were included, that those caused me some concern about approving this, but still got an open mind. I'd like to be able to hear if there are no other questions from the commission at this point. I'd like to go ahead and open the meeting to the agent or applicant, and they have 10 minutes.
Okay. Thank you for giving me the time to speak.
And if you could give us your name and if you could give us your name,
the owner of the property.
If you could give us your name and address too, for the record.
Okay, Mike Crewell, and the address of the location is 5401 North Sullivan. I'm sorry, and when we were looking for a place, we had been in commercial locations prior to this, and we really wanted to find a home for these kids. And so when we found this, we thought it was a great location, and I think it is. However, Kathy's been very open and easy to work with, and shared with me the planning committee's recommendation, and we certainly, if we could stay, we'd like to be good neighbors. But yet, I think with the overwhelming lack of support for us staying, I think we need to move. And so, really, I could withdraw the request is really what I'd like to do. I just want to. I guess when I wanted to appeal to you a little bit in that because we hadn't needed, we'd never come across any zoning issues before. It didn't even cross my mind that this would be a concern. It should have. That's regardless, that is kind of where we're at. We do have to find another location for these kids. I've seen about 3 properties in the last 2 weeks. Our goal is to move as soon as we can. I just would like there to be some time. These are kids that during the day have nowhere to go during the evening until later at night, until they find them a home. So these are basically our homeless foster kids that are in transition for a variety of reasons, whether they run away, coming off the street. So they are volatile children, and so I can understand the request for the neighbors to say this is not a good location. Currently, we are because kids have started school. We typically, for the next month, our numbers are way down, which they are today. We have 2 or 3 kids there today. That number will grow to about 8 or so after school. But we are the respite for St. Francis for when foster kids come into care in an emergency situation. So this is just not a good location. So I'd like to withdraw that application. I just would like to have some kind of time, just a reasonable amount of time. I've got a realtor coming tomorrow to look at putting the place back on the market just to sell it back to another homeowner. And then we're trying to find another location. I think we can do that fairly soon. I hope that'd be our goal.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Warren?
Mr. Crowell, the concern I've got is not the location, but the plan. I mean, in some ways, we've got kids that are considered throwaway kids, and somebody needs to take care of them. So I appreciate what you're doing and trying to meet that need. But the flip side of that is we're going into neighborhoods and creating havoc in the neighborhoods because there doesn't seem to be any kind of a control system to make sure that what's going on in the neighborhood protects everybody. And so my question is, what is it that you're doing that you can do better to protect the neighbors around where you're at? Because if it's just a matter of finding someplace that's a different location, you take the problems with you unless there's a change in the system.
Yeah, I agree. That's the programming piece that we have implemented. It's difficult to be consistent with it. Just to be honest with you, we not only that, we went from the number of kids grew quite a bit quicker than we were prepared for. We have met with the police. We're actually doing a training next week with them and with our staff. We certainly recognize we could do a better job, but I would have to say yes, we can do a better job. That's I could go into detail about what that might look like, but, these are, sometimes we just don't get to choose which kid we get. And there's been some changes at the state level as to what to do with kids, and that has created this environment, but this is not the place to bring it. And so and nevertheless, we need to do a better job. I don't want to make excuses. I agree.
Thank you for your comments.
Okay.
Yes.
I just want to.
Who was first? McKay or?
Cindy, I think.
Cindy, she yelled a lot.
Oh, Cindy. Oh, well, yeah.
6 kids, there's an excuse for that.
We're having a hard time hearing you, Cindy.
Or,
Okay.
can you hear me now?
Barely.
Barely.
Now?
Barely. Use your Verizon. Oh, sorry.
Is that any better?
Yes.
There you go.
So I just want to say thank you for doing what you're doing. I realize that it's very challenging, and I know that we have kids that are in a crisis, and that, I know that it's also a struggle to try to find any neighborhood that is accepting of kids who are in the foster care system. So just wanted to say thank you for doing the work that you're doing. I realize that it's very challenging.
Thank you.
Yes, Ms. Foster.
I guess I would like a staff opinion or an attorney opinion, whichever is appropriate. Once the applicant has withdrawn the application, do we as a board have any say on anything anyway? Are we sitting here discussing this when there's nothing to discuss?
Yes, technically, I've always said that if an applicant is wishing to withdraw an application, they do so in writing, but typically that's before we get to a hearing, okay? We are on the record, it's being transcribed. If it is final to say that he wishes to withdraw it, the zoning code says the applicant can withdraw an application at any time, okay? Final thing is, this board has no authority to grant a grace period or a period of time in which a code violation can continue. We won't talk enforcement, but that's it. If he's withdrawn, that's his choice, that's his right. We can accept it, not have to wait on it in writing, and as a result, we don't have to go forward with a hearing. So that would be my position on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. McKay, did you
Well,
have?
I think Jeff answered my question.
Okay.
What the process would be if they.
Bill Johnson?
Yeah, follow on with that. If we denied the case today,
Can we deny
what
it?
takes place from there on if we deny it? I mean, we don't
Okay,
have to go out there and move out, so.
Again, I'm sorry, Jeff Anzant with Assistant City Attorney. I didn't do that, I apologize. If an applicant withdraws, there is no prohibition for when that could be refiled. If it's denied, then there's a 6-month period in which if they can show changed circumstances, they can file, but that would have to be approved by you. Otherwise, it's a year before they could reapply for this location.
In order to give him some time, we'd have to deny it.
Either way, you don't have the authority to give him some time. Okay.
But if we accept his withdrawal, he can come up with another plan sooner?
Yes,
Versus if we
there's
deny
no-
it, he can't do anything for 6 months.
Well, at least, yeah.
At least.
Typically, it's a year unless they can show changed circumstances, but that is as to this property. But in no event, whether it's withdrawn or denied, can he be given, 3 weeks to try to sell the property to get into another place, because it's a violation today, it will be a violation at 5 o'clock this afternoon and tomorrow and on, and however that's enforced, that's something we won't talk about today, so.
Mr. Dool?
I move his withdrawal.
Hang on, Mr. Johnson.
If the applicant has requested to withdraw this, that's not an action that this commission takes any action on. And that's, the staff can accept the withdrawal, and we don't have to take any action on, is that correct?
That's correct. It's an
That's what I
absolute
thought.
right to withdraw,
Okay.
and it doesn't require approval or denial of this commission.
So we've heard the applicant's request.
Yes.
I suggest we move on.
I would just one last time verify that's his actual request. He understands the situation with that, and once he does that, then we can go on to the next case.
Yeah, I was just getting ready to confirm that withdrawal action with him. Mr. Krewall, is that your intent to withdraw at this time?
Well, from what I was hearing, it by doing so would mean I'd have to vacate, today. By having a denial, I get 6 months.
No,
Not-
no, I think.
Is that what I heard?
I think you may have misheard. I think that, Mr. Van Zandt, if you could come back up and state it legally for us.
Under no circumstance are you given the authority to continue a violation of the zoning code. You have the right to withdraw the application at any time. If it is continued and denied, you cannot reapply for the same kind of an application as you have today for at least 6 months, but the code primarily says 12 months. At this site. Now, if you move to another site, there's no limitation on that either way. But either way, you're not given 6 months to find a new place to move to. That's not what we were trying to say.
Okay.
So I'll ask you again, Mr. Krewall, is this your intent to go ahead and withdraw this request at this time?
Yes,
Okay.
I withdraw my request. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And I concur with Mr. Warren. I hope that you can find a place quickly for these young people that are in need.
We'll do our best to make it happen as soon as we can.
Yeah. Good luck.
Chairman Green, I'll be
Thank you.
departing.
Yeah, Mr. Wadle, could we have the next case, please?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, but the case has been withdrawn. It is done. I'll come out and chat with you in the hallway.
Thank you. If we could have the next case, please.
Mercy. Can't do nothing.
Kathy Morgan for the Planning Department. This case, it was, as we were going through review of the cases on your agenda today, we are hearing this because there was revised information in the packet that came up late yesterday afternoon. And so you have a copy on your desk that shows what was added or in some instances changed. Can you go to the graphic that shows the highlighted pages, the first graphic on page 2? So originally, the applicant had requested 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. and the recommendation from the staff review committee wanted that changed from 8 to 5, and also to limit the days of operation from Monday through Friday. And then the information about the nearby land uses, those are to the north, a half an acre to 5 acre lots. There is quite a bit of agricultural land around that. And then south of the property is, has a warehouse self-storage on it at this time on the, at that location. The rest of that information is correct. A copy of the code violations, and you should have gotten that in your packet, began in 2019 after the previous owner brought the rock and concrete and asphalt detritus into the site. And so the county had multiple code issues with him. The current applicant has just recently purchased this property. And so going down to the bottom of that page, the staff recommendation is to approve with the conditions that the hours of operation be from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday through Friday, and they may not be operated on Saturdays, Sundays, or legal holidays. Would you go to the next slide, please? It was added to item F that a water truck will be available and used to control dust at the site for the duration of this conditional use. Item H, rock crusher shall operate no more than 90 days total. The conditional use is authorized for a period of 12 months from the approval of this application. And at the end of that 12 months, all materials must be removed from the site. A request for extension of timing for the conditional use must be submitted to the Planning Commission for consideration. And then the last item, if there are violations of any of the provisions of conditions of the conditional use, the zoning administrator, in addition to enforcing other remedies set forth in Article 8 of the Unified Zoning Code, may, with the concurrence of the planning director, declare the conditional use null and void. On down to the recommendations are based on the properties around the area. This is zoned SF5, and it could be developed as SF5, but as you've seen, we'll go back to the aerial. Right in the middle of the site, there's a large pile of concrete, asphalt, and things like that that need to be removed. So this would allow, with this site being suitable for residential development, future development, that it would be appropriate to allow the rock crushing operation with the conditional use for a period of 12 months. Again, the restrictions are 90 days, which the rock crushing operation would be in effect during that 12-month period. Let's see, this does comply, or this activity is supported by the recommendations in the Community Investments Plan. Next page, please. Oh, you're already there. You're ahead of me. The impact, what was added, well, there's no municipal water available to the site at this time, but as in earlier, they will provide water trucks to be on site when the operation is in use. There will be a temporarily will increase traffic during the 90-day period of operation, and 135th Street is a paved 4-lane arterial, so the design standards of the street would support that additional heavy traffic. If you could go back now, please, to the maps, go back to the beginning of the slide presentation. Okay, so zoning map, all of the surrounding area is SF 20. Across the street west is in the city limit and is single-family residential development. There is a couple of pockets of limited commercial development to the south. At this location, north 135th Street West is, the road is, the city takes maintenance is conducted by the City of Wichita Public Works. So next, please. This is the pile of rubble that is located on the site. The landowner, the current landowner owns the property surrounding that area. Next, please. This is the community investments plan that shows that that area is appropriate for new residential development. Next, please. This is the conditional use site plan on how they plan to bring in the rock crusher and where they're going to put the recycled materials and then to haul it off. And there is a all-weather access to this from 135th Street. Next, please. Okay, so this is looking from the gate at the entrance to the site off 135th Street. And so you can see they have this big berm there to the left. And then as you look back toward the site, you see the pile of rubble and then some of the trees providing a barrier or screening to the residential to the north. Next. And here is that all-surface road or access. They'll probably do some more to that, but it is not dirt, so, and they do have it gated and locked off at this time. Next. Here again, you can see the berm, beginning of the berm looking southeast at the site, and this runs along the frontage of 135th Street. Next. This is the berm that runs along the north side, or north along 135th Street west from the gate. Next. This is the residential area across 135th Street to the northwest. Next. Again, more of that residential area looking west-northwest. Next. This is looking south along 135th Street, and you can see they have the berm and the big stone barricades. Next. And this is more of that residential area that's located within the city limit. Development across the street looking southwest. Next. And that's it. And you have in your packet, there were the copies of the notice of code violation that was included, and then there are photos that were added to the packet for the record. So I will stand for any questions at this time.
Do we have any questions for staff from the commission? Seeing none, do we have the agent or applicant?
You have both.
Well, there you go. If you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 10 minutes.
Certainly. Thank you, Chairman. Russ Avey, agent for the applicant with Boffman Company, 315 Ellis, Wichita, Kansas. The property owner and applicant, Earl Meese, is also on this meeting call. And I had previously stated that we were fine with the revised staff comments. The one thing that I did not have an opportunity to discuss with staff was the modification of our proposed condition. In the staff report on page 3, condition H combines our proposed restrictions. And the last sentence talks about the piles and all materials must be removed from the site at the end of the 12 months. We had made application requesting that the finished processed recycled material that is shown on the eastern end of the application area be allowed to remain on site beyond the terms of the rock crushing element of this request for purposes of redevelopment of this site into residential subdivision at some point in the future. And so if I'm mischaracterizing that, Mr. Meese may be able to correct me, but again, we were looking at an allowance for the finished material to be stored within that eastern part of the application area beyond the 1-year term of the actual crushing operation. And so we would appreciate the Planning Commission's discussion on that. And if there's any questions, we certainly may be able to answer those for you.
Okay, all right, yes, Ms. Fox.
Can you tell us what the size of the material will be? I mean, is that like, what's the dimension of the crushed rock when you have the finished material there?
It's going to be, and I'm going to, you're asking that question to one of two people with me answering that has the least amount of experience with it. But if you've noticed on the site slides, the aggregate that is used to pave the entryway near the gate to the subject property is a very standard crushed rock type size of aggregate. I don't know the technical specification for that, but it would be a material similar to this as opposed to larger sections of slab.
Picture's worth 1,000 words. That answers my question.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Nix.
Suppose we could hear from the applicant with regard to experience and expertise they have so that we don't repeat some of the violations that occurred before. Is that possible, Russ?
I'm not sure. Earl, if you're still at your computer, I know Mr. Meese and I discussed these revised conditions late this morning. And I know that he had mentioned that he was going to be in and out of meetings this afternoon, but was hopefully going to be able to interact with us. I think he's just got online here, so I'll let him speak.
Yes, we'll be hiring subcontractors to do it that are professionals in the crushing business.
Okay. Got a couple of questions. The rock crusher itself, if I recall, those have water control included in the crushing operation, so it minimizes the amount of dust that would come out of that crushing process. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then with the your request for having some of the crushed material left on site after the 12-month period is completed, you're saying that you're going to be using that for the development of the single-family resident areas, probably in the paving and or in the some kind of subgrade modification. How much of that material are you expecting to remain in the project site?
We would hope that we could use all the material quickly with the development that's going on around town and the work we're doing. We'd hope we'd be able to use it up. The purpose for asking for longer would be if the economy would slow down tremendously, which would, we would lose access to getting rid of it quickly. But with the way things are looking right now, we're fairly sure that things will keep going. We'll use it up, and we are looking and discussing some development options with this piece of property now.
I do appreciate that you've put these berms up to help hide that area back there. It's been an eyesore, was an eyesore for a long time until those berms were installed. When you say so you're planning on leaving all of the crushed material on site, what kind of height are you expecting that to be? I mean, I can see.
When we crush, we're crushing it. We're hoping to leave it in berms 6-7 foot tall at the tallest down there in that lower area. And if you look back where we're wanting to put it, that ground falls off considerably, and we think we can keep it low enough as to not be a distraction to the public.
Okay. Do we have any other questions for the agent and applicant at this time? Okay, I'm going to open it up for public comment. You might want to stick around for a rebuttal at the conclusion. So at this time, is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to address the commission on this case? If you could please come forward and give us your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, my name's Kevin Holman. I reside at 1826 North 135th Street West. We're the 5-acre tract immediately north of the entrance into this. My wife and I have lived there since about 2003 with our horses. When concrete and asphalt first started coming into the property, back in 2011, there was an endless stream of trucks coming in and out. The project foreman told me they were paying the property owner $110 a load to dump. I contacted county code enforcement early on. They advised me that it was legal for non-combustible material to be brought onto the property, but under the code, no zoning would allow for a grinding operation. Within several months, both of our paint horses had difficulty breathing. After tests and exams by the vet, he said it's most likely caused by the dust and it's COPD. We lost those horses a few years later. These operations have created a large amount of dust, not only from the truck and equipment traffic, but from the grinding operations, or wood from the grinding operations. This property changed hands this year and large berms were constructed along the west side of the property. I contacted code enforcement, and Mr. Dixon down there told me that Mr. Lett didn't tell me everything when he spoke to me earlier. Mr. Dixon told me the operation could be approved at this site. This means at first code told me okay to dump, but no grinding. Now it's kind of reversed that situation. It can't be both ways. Codes can and are amended as need to address specific problems within jurisdictions. This requires code knowledge as well as how to research code if additional information is needed. Code enforcement failed at this. I am pro-business, but only when it doesn't negatively impact others. This applicant did not cause this problem, but he purchased the property knowingly. The prior owner of this property profited greatly while costing my wife and I about $25,000 for these horses. And they died at ages about 14 and 15, which a horse lives in their 30s. In addition to financial losses we incurred, we are subject to increased dust, health hazard, noise, traffic congestion, and more than likely decreased property value. Approval of this item would allow all these negative impacts to my wife and I, as well as neighbors, to continue. It would also require us to get rid of our remaining horses to protect their health. We can't, now that I know that's an issue, we can't expose the ones we have now. These impacts lead directly to a decreased quality in our life, for which county codes and regulations are specifically intended to protect. My wife and I are adamantly opposed to any approval on this property that would allow the applicant's request for a grinding operation to go forward. The material.
Kevin, your time's up. Can you wrap it up in about a minute?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. The material, my wife and I are adamantly opposed to any approval that would allow this property and allow this operation to go forward. The material in its current form should be taken to a properly located grinding facility. This would speed up the operation so the land could be developed in a more suitable fashion, reflecting the surrounding area. Thank you for your consideration, and are there any questions?
Thank you. Do we have any questions for the speaker?
I did want to confirm that you got that, a letter that I submitted. Okay. Okay.
Thank you. You bet. Is there anyone else in the council chambers that would like to address the commission on this? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this case?
Yes, I would.
If you could give us your name and address, and you have 3 minutes, please.
Sure. My name is Jeremy Carroll. My address is 1724 North Nicholton Court. I also have some of the same concerns as the previous speaker. Not only when they brought in the dirt to mask the concrete, I was changing my air filter every 2 weeks. And I also have a 2-year-old that, had a couple illnesses that were related to respiratory issues. So the other concern that I have is I am a remote worker. I've been a remote worker for well over a decade. So this is a permanent work arrangement for me, not pandemic related. And my wife also operates a home-based business. So we are 100% reliant on a suitable working environment, free of noise and the additional issues that bringing a rock crusher into a residential area would cause. And so I'm asking that the committee deny this application. And I would like to also propose that this material be hauled off and removed to a suitable rock crushing location as opposed to crushing it on site.
Okay.
I have also spoken with some of my neighbors who have expressed concern as well. In fact, my neighbor Andrea that lives at 1802 North Nicholton Court expressed interest in attending this meeting. However, because of work commitments, she was not able to. So, and in discussing this with her, she had the same concerns as well. So.
Okay, thank you for
So
your,
that's it.
thank you for your testimony. Is there anyone on the commission that would have any questions of the speaker? Hearing none. Is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this case? Hearing none. Did you want to speak? Okay. Yes, go ahead and come on up. And if you could give us your name and address, and you have 3 minutes, please.
I'm Dale Grodiger. I live at 2041 Shelley Road, which is directly north. It's a little housing addition of about 10 houses. We got dust that quarter of a mile away during the time they were hauling that stuff. My significant other has severe asthma, and our neighborhood comprises of entirely almost older kids like myself. We are very opposed to all this dust coming into our neighborhood. Silica is a dangerous substance, and I don't think they can possibly mitigate all of it. We would be opposed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have anybody on the commission with questions? Hearing none, and you're a kid at heart. I like that. Thank you for your testimony. Is there anybody else, either in the chambers or virtually, that would like to address the commission on this item? Hearing none, we'll bring it back to the agent and applicant for 2 minutes, of rebuttal.
Thank you, Chairman Green. I'll be quick with my portion of the rebuttal. As we've heard in numerous other cases, typically surrounding sand extraction operations where rock crushing is an ancillary part of those type of facilities, as we've learned, these operations do not generate silica at the level, airborne silica, at the level that is harmful. I would say that there is no greater risk or no greater amplification of air quality problems with this operation than there would be with standard farming practices as far as creating pollen, dust, and airborne dirt. And I would finally remind all of us that this is not a permanent rock crushing facility. This is temporary with only a nominal amount of days of actual operation. And with previous other rock crushing conditional use cases, I typically trot out a 30-second video of one actually in operation. These, if some of you may recall who have seen that video, there is no visible dust coming off of the crushing operation itself. There are spray nozzles attached to this machinery, as well as noise. This generates no greater noise than any other type of farm implement. So those are the points that I would like to make in rebuttal, and let Mr. Meese address anything that he sees as necessary.
Okay.
I think Russ has covered it well. I do understand the dust concerns, and we'll do our best to make sure we take care of that. Like I said, the permit application has restrictions for us to keep the dust down, and our whole intent and desire is just to be a good neighbor and clean up a situation by a previous landowner.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Meese. Are there any questions for the agent or applicant at this point? Hearing none, I guess I have a question for staff. I know that they have requested an extension on that removal of the crushed material past that 1 year time frame that we have identified in this packet. And I don't know if you were outside at that time, not in the meeting itself when he was mentioning that, but.
No, I think it's an excellent question, and what I'll do is I'll give you my take on it, and then I'm going to defer to legal to make sure that I'm in the right parameters. But the storage can occur while the crushing operation is taking place, and that the storage would be temporary and associated with that crushing operation. In the staff report, the recommendation is 12 months. That's 12 months in full duration for the temporary crushing operation, as well as the storage in the same 12 months. What the applicant has indicated is a request, as I understand it, to extend the storage so that it can remain for a longer duration than the crushing operations will be in effect. Part of the challenge with that is that the crushed materials would be considered, as I understand it, outdoor storage. Outdoor storage is not permitted in this zoning classification. It would if it's long-term storage, then it requires a zone change. However, in terms of the temporary duration, as Russ had indicated, this is a recent change. It happened today as we caught that there were errors in the staff report. Previous to this, it had stated that the rock crusher shall operate no longer than a period of 12 months. Forgive me, just one moment. I need to look up. I've got a marked up version. we had that stockpiles and processed materials may be stored on site for a period of not more than 3 years. So we had specified a separate time from the rock crushing that the materials could remain on site. Part of our challenge, and I'll give you the explanation about why there's this change, is because of the proximity to the residences, the sensitivity to the dust, as you've heard about, which is why we are recommending the shortened time frame. Now, I guess that begs the question then, do you have the discretion to provide a longer period of time as a temporary measure for the storage of these piles? And my understanding would be yes. I will defer to law to correct me if I've gotten that wrong.
I guess this is in the county?
It is. So
So,
Justin
Mr.
is
Wagoner?
online.
Yes, Chairman Justin Wagoner, Assistant County Counselor, and I'll try to, I guess, the summary from how I'd be looking at this, and as was noted some in the presentation by planning staff, there have been prior code citations on this. I'm not sure if the one with outdoor storage as a charge was included in the backup materials. My recollection was at least there are multiple cases, at least one of the cases was for outdoor storage and or was amended to outdoor storage. The concern would be if there's a condition of approval that would allow outdoor storage to occur on this property outside the time frame of the conditional use, that would essentially be your zoning, your conditional use action contravening or allowing a violation of the zoning code to persist, which I don't think is something that can occur with a conditional use. And so it would be my opinion that you could, during the conditional, however the duration of the conditional use is, I think it's proposed at 12 months right now, yes, it could still be stored there. It could be stored inside of a container, I should say an enclosed structure. It would not be outdoor storage. But if it is going to be stored in an outdoors area after the time frame for the conditional use, then I think it would probably be contrary to the zoning code's conditions, and you can't really waive those as part of a conditional use. You could, if there is a will to extend the time frame of the conditional use beyond the 12 months that have been proposed by planning staff, I think that would be something that could be done. But I'd be happy to answer any other questions on that.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions of legal on this? Okay. Did you have any more to say there, Mr. Wadle?
I would just point out, well, I guess I stand corrected then on that one.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
Do I understand correctly then that we could extend the conditional use to, say, 18 months or even 2 years, in which case they could store it longer and hope that they'd used it up on site by then? Alternatively, whatever time frame we give them, they're going to have to either use it up before then or pile it in trucks and haul it off somewhere else where they can do outdoor storage, or ask for a zoning change on the property. So is the simplest solution, and maybe the agent can speak to this, to extend the time frame a little, maybe 18 months, and with the understanding that that would then give them enough time to get this crushed, find out what they're going to do with the property, and have a better handle on how long it's going to take them to get the piles of aggregate either used or removed or both?
Mr. Wagner, is that?
I think I would say that that's an option that the planning commission could undertake. I'm not going to say, I'd defer to Scott in terms of what, they would suggest as planning staff, but as a legal matter, I tend to think that's something that could be done here. Again, I would defer to Scott on any of if they have a planning comment on that.
I guess the only comment I would have on that is, one, to point out that although there is in the staff report recommendation for 12 months, that the crushing unit would operate no more than 90 days total out of that period of time. Likewise, part of our recommendation for the shortened time frame of 12 months is because of the location of where this one is and the sensitivities to the surrounding land uses.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Johnson.
This is a tough deal. I like the idea of the crushing and reuse and recycling material. That material was hauled in there a number of years ago. I guess hindsight, I wish it would have been crushed before all the houses around there were built. Since it hadn't been, I would probably prefer that they move it and crush it somewhere else, but I don't know that the rest of the commission would agree to that. And if the commission decides to approve it, I don't want it any longer than 12 months.
Yeah, yes, Mr. Warren.
Starting with some of the same things. We've gone through enough of these through the years that I'm satisfied that the crushing process itself and the safety factors that are in that in terms of dampening it, keeping the dust down, seem to work. But my concern is, does a pile of dust or a pile of rock create dust over a long period of time on windy days, or does that settle? Are we creating a long problem by allowing a pile of this crushed material to stay on site over a longer period? And then the other, I know we've had some of our situations where the road itself, because one of the things we talked about was the traffic. Trucks going in and out creates dust. So we take care of the problem of the process of creating it and keeping the dust mitigation down to a minimum. But every truck that comes in and comes out creates problems. So I don't know where, have been around enough to know whether that's if we say get it out, which is worse, the pile that sits and maybe creates dust, or the process of loading it up and moving it away someplace else. We've got a site, I don't know how we're gonna get away from dust altogether, one way or the other. We're danged if we do and danged if we don't.
I know that under one of these conditions, that there is going to be a water truck on site that will be used to keep the dust down on the road going in and out while the trucks are, whatever trucks are in use in this process. So that, I think that's covered. And I like the idea of, the KDHE approved rock crusher that has built-in water suppression to keep the dust down. I'm almost of an opinion that we keep to our year of operation with 90-day max of crushing. And then after that year, if they have not been able to use up all of that material, then it will be upon them to remove the stored material, if you will, off the site, maintaining the dust levels of the ingress and egress road that's in place. And yes, Mr. McKay.
Well, I kind of look at it from a little bit different standpoint. The mess was there, has been there for a while. And the applicant is trying to clean this mess up, even though he may benefit from it in the long run. But he's trying to clean up the mess and help the neighborhood, because he's talking about having long-range planning there to begin with. And one of the reasons why, if he owns the land, that's why he wants to get the mess cleaned up. So, but I agree with you. I think 12 months is, conditions that's down here are great, but I look at it a little bit different. I think he's doing something to help the environment and everything else over the long haul.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. That's why I'm trying to work out a plan that will work. And I appreciate the concerns of the neighborhood, and those don't fall lightly on us. But as you so eloquently put, this is something that he, I can't say inherited, because he purchased it knowing that it was there. But he is trying to improve the area. And so I guess.
Somebody's got to deal with it.
Yeah. And so I guess with that, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve per staff comment that, the revised staff comments that were given to us today, and stay with the 12-month period with 90 days of crushing.
Second.
And so I didn't catch was it Fox? Fox had the second, and I made the
No, I
motion.
said nothing.
So
Foster.
Foster
Okay.
Foster was the second. Okay. That's what I get for trusting McKay, saying,
I just heard a woman's voice.
We all sound alike.
Well, I forgot we had on microphones because Ann, I can usually hear her.
okay, so there's a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 11 to 9 to 1. We're down to 10. Okay. All right. Interesting dialogue. If we could have our next case, please.
Good afternoon again. Philip Zevenbergen for the record. CUP 2143 is a request to create the Chelsea Brook Community Unit Plan, which will be DP 358, on a limited industrially zoned property located west of South Greenwich on the north side of Kellogg, as you can see on the map in front of you. If you want to go to the aerial real quick, there is a portion of the platted lot. It's this warehouse on the north. Though it's part of the same platted lot, it is split and it is not part of the CUP. In addition, on the southwest corner of the property, there is an existing billboard that is also not part of the CUP request. That comes into play because the primary reason for the request for the CUP is to allow for additional sign rights to the property than what would be permitted with the current zoning based on the sign code. The property is 12.37 acres in size. It would just be one parcel. With limited industrially zoned property over 6 acres, a CUP is not required. It is only required for properties that are zoned limited commercial or general commercial. So they are doing this just on their own. There's nothing in the zoning code that's requiring it. There's no zone change associated with it. Purpose of the CUP is to create a cohesive development and, as I mentioned before, allow more signage than what would be permitted by the zoning code or the sign code collectively. The CUP allows uses that are by right in the limited industrial zone property. The CUP stated the setback requirements, and the only thing that staff is recommending is it did not account for a requirement in the zoning code to have either a 30-foot rear yard or 30-foot rear setback or alley or service drive or a combination thereof. One of the recommendations of staff is that the revised text of the CUP include some accommodation that is compliant with the regulations for a community unit plan in the zoning code. Regarding the signage, the CUP is proposing two 60-foot pole signs with a total of 700 square feet of sign area to be split between the signs however they choose, with an individual sign not exceeding 500 square feet. So to put that in other terms, you could have one sign that is 500 square feet, no larger for one of the signs, and then the additional signage that is left is only 200 to be used on the other sign. As I mentioned before, the existing offsite billboard is not part of the CUP, so it is not included in the permitted signs that we are talking about. The sign code delineates the amount of the number of signs, and the amount of square footage of sign area based on your linear frontage of the street in front of you. And it does it based off of a ratio of 0.8 square feet of sign area to linear feet. The property has 665.5 linear feet. This would afford them 532 square feet of sign area based on the sign code. So the requested increase to 700 square feet would be a 32% increase. The sign code also limits the size of an individual sign to be 300 square feet, so their request for a 500 square foot individual sign is a 67% increase. Additionally, the sign code limits the height of an on-site ground or pole sign to 25 feet with the provision that it can be constructed 20 feet above a guardrail of an elevated roadway in front of them. With the recent completion of the East Kellogg expansion, Kellogg does begin to elevate at this location as it approaches the crossing over top of South Greenwich. It is not at its full height at this location. It is ever increasing as you're going east. So the total height of what that provision in the sign code of 20 feet above the guardrail would change for each sign depending on where they are located, because the intent of the sign code is it's 20 feet of the guardrail in front of you. So depending on where they are and what the height of the elevated roadway is in front of them would dictate the height of the sign being 20 feet above the guardrail. And that would have to be done by administrative adjustment. That's not something that would be done. That is something that is actually reviewed by staff on an administrative level, but it is something that is afforded by the sign code. In recent history, in 2020, the zoning administrator approved an administrative adjustment at Kellogg and Zelta. It's not shown on your map here, but Zelta is about a quarter mile east of Greenwich, for that very thing of allowing a sign to be increased to 20 feet above the guardrail at that location. At that location, it was a total height of 55 feet. That site is approximately 3/4 of a mile away to the east of this site we are talking about right now. Additionally, there have been site height increases permitted to 60 feet at other areas along Kellogg. Most recently, we actually talked about one at Kellogg and Rock. There's been several at that location. However, those are 2 miles to the west. So to say that, so we're at Greenwich, Rock is 2 miles away, not necessarily a one-to-one thing. The conditions over at Kellogg and Rock are different than here. Staff is recommending that the treatment of the sign be the same as the one on Zelta, to where they could be afforded 20 feet higher than the guardrail at this location. Again, the overall height would be dependent upon where the sign is installed and how high the guardrail is at that location. If you want to go, I put a slide in here. I did a review of the signs between Greenwich and Webb Road. Keep going one more. We'll talk about the airport hazard zone in a second. So here we go. You see the map in front of you. Hopefully it's not too busy for you. All of this visually shows is that all of the signage within the mile between Webb and Greenwich adhere to the zoning code of either 25 feet, and these are included ones in the CUP. I think the tallest one might be 35 feet, but in this area, there is nothing greater than what is permitted by the zoning code within the mile between Webb Road and Greenwich. That being said, the expansion of Kellogg is fairly new, and so this might be just kind of the beginning of organizations wanting a little bit higher signs based on the elevated freeway in front of them. So really, I guess we tread a little bit respectfully here as to what standard are we going to set for this portion of Kellogg. We go back a slide or two. There was a little preview here. One thing that it doesn't necessarily dictate what can happen today because it's two different entities having the authority here, but the site is located in an airport hazard zone A, which is the red on this screen you have in front of you. That limits the height of any object to 25 feet. That being said, you could approve a object to be taller, the signs to be taller than 25 feet. What it just means is they have to get approval from the FAA for that sign height. So you could approve it and they might get denied by the FAA and it becomes a moot point. So I do know that the applicant has submitted their paperwork to the FAA. I don't know where that stands. I know the agent for the applicant is here. I don't know if she has any updates for you regarding that application. All the other measures of the CUP are per the code, not necessarily worth taking time in the presentation to talk about them. This was heard by the District Advisory Board 2 on August 9th. They voted 8-0 in favor. I believe there was a discussion there of the agent requesting that instead of 20 feet above the guardrail to be afforded 25 feet above the guardrail as part of that discussion, just for your guys' information. Overall, staff is recommending approval, as I said, of 20 feet above the guardrail at this location. We talked about how the general provision for the rear yard needs to be included, and then there's a stipulation or the condition in there that they would have to receive approval for the FAA in order to do this. The area surrounding this is all very heavily commercial regarding the signage being at 20 feet above the guardrail. There's really no issues regarding our findings for approval of request for a higher sign. So again, I won't take time to go through that in our presentation. If you want to go through the slides real quick, we can just get a visual of what the site looks like. We're going to move forward to the pictures. Keep going. It's a CUP drawing. This is the location looking at Kellogg to the southeast. You can see, as I mentioned, the highway is getting taller as you go east toward the bridge over Greenwich. Next slide. This is looking northeast at the property. It's undeveloped, has quite a bit of growth on it. Next slide. This is the property to the east. It's the former Golden Corral. I don't believe it's occupied. You can actually see their monument sign kind of to scale as to how big their sign is in relation. Next slide. This is looking to the west. That's the billboard I talked about. That's not part of the CUP. Again, this object is governed by the same airport hazard zone. So it, is not a very tall billboard because of the Beechcraft runway nearby. Next slide. This is the Kellogg Freeway to the southwest. Next slide. And that's it. I can stand for any questions.
Any questions for staff? Philip, I have just one. I think I already know the answer, but we're talking 20 feet above the guardrail at the location of where that sign is, not 20 feet above the guardrail at its highest point.
That is correct.
And I guess the reason why I bring that up is because you said that this, eastbound, it's ascending to an elevation that could conceivably, if it's 20 feet above the elevation at that point, westbound traffic could conceivably not be able to even see the sign because they haven't gotten anywhere close to the apex of that.
Right.
Of the
Something
bridge.
to note here, and this is just the nature of how the interchange was constructed with the frontage road and where exits are. The exit for Greenwich westbound is over a quarter mile away. So to get a sign high enough and big enough to alert individuals of there's something to get off the highway at Greenwich would have to be a pretty tall and big sign to alert them soon enough to get off the highway at Greenwich. So just something to keep in mind with that. That's just something to think about as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
So why does the applicant, given that this is a westbound frontage road or traffic on Kellogg that they're trying to advertise to, and the way the traffic pattern is, people are not going to be able to get off on Greenwich immediately anyway, therefore someone's going to have to know where they're going before they go there. What's the point of this taller sign?
I will defer to the agent.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none, if we could have the agent or applicant. Looks like we have the agent.
Yes. Kim Edgington, agent for the applicant, 2532 North Cardinal Drive, Wichita, Kansas. To answer your question, it is possible to make that exiting movement onto Greenwich, the exit there, if you are able to see this sign. So there's a lot of factors that are coming into play here because the crown of Kellogg is farther to the east than our location. So even though the crown isn't in front of our location, it still affects the sight line to our location. So our request today is simply to ask you to consider removing condition number 2 from this approval for the community unit plan. I have personally been in front of you for 2 cases that are just to the west of here, on the north side of Kellogg, where a 65-foot sign was allowed, and then a little bit farther to the west, where an 80-foot sign was permitted. And then at the Kellogg and West Street interchange, which is kind of a similar type of commercial area, I was personally involved in 3 different CUPs at that had a minimum height of 60 feet for the signs there. So this is really not out of character in those locations where Kellogg has now undergone reconstruction. Many of the signs that you saw, as Philip stated, were in existence before this interchange was all completed. So one of the things we would like to try to eliminate with the figuring out, where is this sign going to be? Where is it in relation to the height of the guardrail? When we're working with marketing with national companies, national brands, it's a lot simpler to go in with a concrete standard and say, this property is allowed a 60-foot sign, rather than having to go through the process of, if you put the sign here, it can be this high. If you put the sign here, it can be this high. This kind of just eliminates some of that subjectivity, gives us a more objective package to put in front of potential buyers, potential users. When we went to the DAB, we did talk about potentially getting that 25 feet higher than the guardrail. The DAB really didn't express an opinion one way or another, that they minded about the height of the sign that we had requested. Their statement was simply that we would go to the FAA, and whatever the FAA approved, they felt like they would be comfortable with. So we do have that application in process. We're familiar with that process. This developer also worked on the Top Golf project, so we had to go through the same thing there. So we are fairly confident in working with them that the FAA is not going to object to the 60-foot height based on the way that those the traffic patterns are in this location for the aircraft. We eventually plan to likely come back with some CUP adjustments to create some different parcels on this. It is a pretty large parcel, and it is one of the last remaining larger parcels along Kellogg in this area. So, probably expect to see potentially a big box user on the north part of it, and then some other pad sites. So, one thing we have also tried to do is decrease the overall amount of signs here. By the zoning code, we could have 5 signs at this location. So we have only asked for 2 signs just to kind of minimize that visual clutter along there, to reduce it down to those 2 signs. And in doing so, we would ask for your consideration that those be allowed to be 60 feet and be consistent with other commercial areas right around this vicinity. And if you have any questions, I would be glad to stand for those at this time.
Yeah, Kim, I would assume that the furthest east property line would be the highest for the guardrail?
Yes. Yeah, it starts towards the west, it starts descending.
Right.
Yes.
So how tall, just out of curiosity, how tall would 25 feet above the guardrail at that east property line extended south, how tall would that sign be?
We expect that it would be about 40 feet tall.
So 15 foot to the guardrail from the ground, and then, so we're looking
Right.
at 20 feet above the
Right.
requirement, or I guess it would be, well, actually 25 feet because it's 20 foot above the guardrail. So-
Right.
So it'd be 35 to 40 feet.
So, and if you can understand, that's where the kind of this fluid, non-standard height gets to be an issue, especially, if you've got a user that's looking farther west on Kellogg and, in fact, we just constructed the sign there at Kellogg and Heather, which is just east of the Kellogg and Rock intersection, which is 60 feet high. And when you're comparatively marketing properties, that can really come into play.
Any other questions? Yes, Mr. McKay?
Kim, you said that you're making an application on the height of the sign with the airport authority people?
Yes.
And so you'll be satisfied with whatever that is?
Yes, we will be, there's no going around that. We have made application at the 60-foot height, which is what we had asked for in the CUP.
The reason why I asked the question is because if it's all right with them, it should be all right with us, is what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
And we
Use that in the motion.
I mean, we could approve 100 feet, but FAA is going to tell us how high that sign can be.
Right. And when we submitted that application, which has been about 4 weeks ago, we were informed that it would be an 8 to 12-week process for that approval, which we were happy to hear that they said week and not month. So.
Well, but you never know.
Right.
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, is there anyone in the council chambers that would like to address the commission on this case? Seeing none, is there anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this case? Anyone virtually? Hearing none, we will bring it back to the commission for action.
Make a motion, we approve, subject to staff comments and referring to item number 2 by the staff. Is it the FAA that we make the height
Yes.
sign that's approved by the FAA?
Second.
Okay, could you rephrase that?
No.
So they've applied for 60.
In other words, what I'm saying to you is this, that if the FAA says it's got to be 45 or it could be 45,
Gotcha.
that's what we are. Whatever the FAA approves is what we're approving.
Making sure that's what I heard. Okay. And is there a second on that?
Yeah.
Yes. You, okay, so it was McKay and Bill Johnson. Yes, Mr. Warren.
Okay, the other signs in the area can go to 60 foot? Is that,
It's only referred to this is only referral to the CUP.
okay? So I guess my thinking would be the FAA maximum or 60 foot, whichever is greater.
Lesser.
Or whichever.
Whatever is allowed. I guess if the FAA said we can do 120, we're not approving 120, are we?
Well, she said they requested 60.
Yeah.
I was going by what she requested.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so if they requested 60, if it's that or less.
Okay.
Gotcha. Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Ms. Fox, or Ms. Foster, you okay?
Can we clarify the motion? Is the motion to approve per staff comments with exception of number 2, and instead we're saying 60 feet or what the FAA approves, whichever is lesser?
They requested a 60-foot sign from the FAA. I don't think the FAA would come back and say, yes, you can do an 80-foot sign. Like, they would either approve 60 feet or a lesser degree. So Mr. McKay's motion of defaulting to the FAA's approval would allow a maximum of a 60-foot sign if the FAA approves a 60-foot sign.
And if it would help to clarify, we could say with a maximum height of
Well,
60.
if you want me to say maximum height of 60 feet rather than using the FFA qualifications.
Right.
Okay, I
I
just
can do
want to
that.
be sure I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
it straight.
Yeah, okay. And so, yeah, and
I just
that's,
took for granted when she said her application was for 60 feet, that that's what we were.
that they're not going to come back and say something higher. Okay, good enough. Any other questions on the motion? Are you clear?
I do need some clarification. Did we end up with that the height would be set at a maximum of 60 feet?
Yes.
Okay.
Right,
Not
with
to
a
exceed
maximum
60
height
feet.
of 60
Not to
feet.
exceed 60 feet. Sounds,
Right.
we're clear.
Okay. And it was
Thank
McKay
you.
and.
I'm glad it's not just me.
It was McKay and Warren on the motion.
No,
So,
Bill Johnson.
I mean Johnson, McKay and Johnson, sorry, Bill.
The old guys.
Okay. Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. How many are we at now? We still at 10? 10-0. Next case, please.
Final public hearing item for you before we go to the CIP discussion. We have Zone 2137. The applicant is requesting a zone change from single-family residential to LC Limited Commercial for the property located at 1759 South Webb Road. The purpose of the request is to develop the site with limited commercial uses. As you can see on the zoning map in front of you, properties to the north along Webb Road are predominantly zoned limited commercial. There is one in the green that's zoned general office. Property across the street to the east is zoned single-family residential with a church development. Property to the south and the west is zoned two-family with duplexes developed at that location. The property directly to the north, limited commercial, it has a protective overlay number 41, and it's developed with retail uses. Staff is recommending a similar protective overlay for this situation, since this will be an LC zone property, to ensure uniform and consistent and fair development of the commercial properties in the area. Essentially, we used similar language from there. There were certain things in that protective overlay that were not applicable to this location, but as you saw in the staff report, the protective overlay lists no portable or off-site signs allowed. Speakers associated with drive-up windows shall be directed away from residential zone districts and shall be a minimum of 50 feet away from a residential zone district. And that buffer trees shall be planted along the west and south property lines where abutting residential zoning at a density 1.5 times the minimum standard of the landscape ordinance. The protective overlay 41 just had that increased buffer for the west property line, but since this one has residential zoning, similar residential zoning on the west and the south, figured it was applicable to both of those locations. The property is unplatted. Platting will be required in order getting a building permit. Drainage, access, potentially cross-lot access will all be determined at the time of platting. The request is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. If you go to the land use map, the site is identified to be within the residential district, but as you can see, the dark brown that's touching it just to the north and the east is for new employment. These use category overlays were not meant to be hard lines, and so it's conceivable and not unreasonable to expect that you could request for a commercial zone at this location, especially considering the commercial zoning that is north of it. The other thing that staff outlines in the findings for our recommendation for approval subject to the protective overlay is that this is basically a leftover parcel. All the properties to the north are developed with those commercial properties. All the residential properties developed around it are already within subdivisions, and they're oriented inward away from this property. And so you just have this piece of leftover platted land that just happens to be residential right now. It's not unreasonable to ask for their commercial designation considering the development to the north and how the residential properties have been developed around it. I can go through the site pictures with you. This is looking at the site. It does have a house on it, but being on the side, I believe it is unoccupied. The next picture, please. This is the church across the street. Next picture. This is to the southeast. There is a housing development there with a screening wall and some fairly mature trees. Next picture. This is looking at the rear of the property from the adjacent retail store at the duplexes. And you can see the trees in the left-hand side of the picture are actually some pretty heavy growth in the rear of the subject property. Next picture. This is looking at the duplexes to the southwest of the site. Next picture, or at least the trees covering them. This is the retail development north of the site, the limited commercial zone properties north of there. Next picture. And that is that. This was heard by the District Advisory Board 2 as well on August 9th. They recommended approval 7-1. They had a condition that was taken into consideration based on public comment to have a screening wall instead of just a screening fence at a height of 8 feet, which is within the realms of the zoning code. So instead of just a 6-foot screening fence to meet the screening standards, their condition for approval included a 8-foot screening wall. It is my understanding, and I believe the agent is here as well, that during that discussion, they were amenable to that condition, but I'll have him speak to that just in case things have changed since then. I can stand for any staff questions.
Questions for staff? Hearing none, if we could have the agent or applicant, and you could state your name and address for the record, and you have 10 minutes.
My name is Cody Branham. I'm an attorney with the Adams Jones Law Firm. We are located at 1635 North Waterfront Parkway, Wichita 67208. My firm represents the owner of the property. Essentially here today to answer any questions that you all may have about this proposed development. In terms of the District Advisory Board, it's correct. There were some members of the public that lived in the duplex development to the southwest that essentially expressed concern for commercial development. We don't know exactly yet what the development may be, some sort of retail most likely for this location. And they're concerned that there may be customers, should it turn into a restaurant, that there may be customers that may litter around that same property and just cleanup would become an issue. And so that conversation led to the District Advisory Board recommending an 8-foot, I think the words they used were masonry wall around the area. I expressed at that time that, you know, if that's their will, so be it. But as we see here today, I would recommend that the staff recommendations are more than adequate for the area, and that imposing the 8-foot masonry wall imposition on this particular property is inconsistent with the idea of fair development as you compare the property to the north. And frankly, in terms of a commercial development, that cost would eventually just be passed along to a tenant, and that would probably delay development of this property. As we see here today, it's a vacant house that's been vacant for a number of years. It's in a state of disrepair. My client would like to, frankly, tear it down as soon as possible and get started. They are starting the platting process. They've retained Boffman Company to help them with that process. And so once more, we agree with the staff recommendation that protective overlay, similar to the protective overlay that's imposed on the lot to the north, is more than adequate, and to essentially disregard the additional height and material requirements recommended by the District Advisory Board. And with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Do you have any questions for the agent? Hearing none? So there will be some kind of a wall or fence or?
Yes, I think more than likely similar. I think one of the pictures showed the lot directly to the north has a 6-foot wooden privacy fence. More than likely, just considering the cost of materials, that is what would go in here. But it would be on both the south and the west side of the lot. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the duplexes have their own wooden privacy fences there now. So you're talking, 2 fences side by side there.
Stand by. You may have to rebut something.
Sure, yeah, thank you all.
Is there anyone virtually that would like to address the commission on this case?
Yes, I would like to comment, please.
If we could have your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Carl Person. I'm the owner of 1730 Beach Court, and I'll be brief. I don't have any specific objections to this, but I do have concerns with the further encroachment of commercial property on a residential area and the additional noise and lighting that will come with it, both from a livability aspect and to the potential detriment of home values. Some concerns have already been addressed, but the question is, will there be any other further restrictions on the property, such as hours of operation, lighting, or other than has already been stated? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Hearing none. Is there anyone else virtually that would like to address the commission on this? Hearing none. If we could have the agent come back and.
Addressing the concern of, I think, noise pollution is one of the items that they were concerned with. The recommended protective overlay from staff includes where if there is a drive-through restaurant, where they can orient speakers to not be facing the south or the west so as to not direct lighting there. Certainly for sound, certainly for lighting will comply with the applicable, lighting standards. In terms of further encroachment of commercial property into a residential area, same concern was expressed at the district advisory board meeting, and in fact, the one district advisory board member that voted against it, that was essentially her position was, I don't like the idea of turning a residential property into a commercial property. Unfortunately, frankly, in my opinion, this property is no longer viable as a residential property. There's the property as it sits today, it would cost more than likely to go in and rehab the property to be in a livable state rather than to tear it down and build a new house, more than likely. And based on its location, the fact that there's only access off of Webb Road, the fact that you're surrounded by commercial on the north, I just think if we leave this as a residential, it's going to remain vacant for however many years until we come back and try to rezone it once more.
He did say something about hours of operation, and I understand that that's probably pretty.
That's going to depend entirely on who is the ultimate tenant. Certainly there's, ordinances that restrict what businesses, and in fact, if there's concern of, nighttime activity, in terms of a drinking establishment or things like that, there's certain ordinances that dictate how close one of those can be to a church, which is right across the street. And so more than likely, this is going to be a national flag retailer of some sort.
Thanks. Any questions?
Thank you.
Bring it back to the commission for action. Mr. Warren?
I'm going to make a motion to approve as presented. This is my neighborhood, and this is an ideal change that needs to take place. This is a lot that should be like commercial. It's already got the buffer. We normally use duplexes as a buffer from business to single-family residential. This is laid out perfectly for that, so I think this is the right thing. The existing fencing is more than adequate and shouldn't come in with anything more than what the other businesses that are already there would be required to do. So this is, I think, a fair request, and it should be approved as presented. So that's my motion.
I'll second it.
Second. Moved by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Florence, to approve per staff comments. Any questions on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on, we've got Mary.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mary Hunt, Planning Department. Today you will hear from Mark Manning, Finance Director for the City of Wichita, and he will be presenting the recommendation for the 10-year capital improvements programs that goes from 2022 to 2031. And the question before you today is if you agree that the proposed CIP is in conformance with our comprehensive plan. Included with your staff report was an analysis of the CIP prepared by Stephen Banks of the Planning Department. And the analysis reports on the spending patterns, including the location of projects, like are they within the established central area or outside the established central area. It also addresses the spending by the comprehensive plan's priorities, which are to maintain, enhance, or expand. So the spending categories in the plan are split up briefly, pretty much into 4 categories. One is transportation. The next one is water, sewer, and stormwater. We have things with arts and culture, which address things on the quality of life here in Wichita, and then public safety. So at the conclusion, we'll ask you to vote on if the CIP is in conformance with the plan. So unless you have some questions of me right now, I will invite Mark Manning, the Finance Director, who will describe the projects and how they align with the comp plan.
Thank you.
You bet.
If you could please state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Green. I'm Mark L. Manning with the Finance Department, and I will try to make it very brief, actually. May need a 1-minute extension, though.
Okay, I can give you that.
Okay. So I'll go over our CIP development and our prioritization model, basically tell you how we create the CIP, then I'll give you an overview of the CIP, and we'll talk about a little bit about our funding capacity and some specific projects. But as Mary mentioned, what your primary task today is to hopefully find that what I'm presenting to you is in conformance with the Community Investments Plan, and we certainly try very hard to make sure that it is. Okay, next slide. So this little model basically shows you how we develop CIP. Of course, the most important circle is up in the upper left-hand corner, the Community Investments Plan. That does, in fact, heavily influence what we do. We also use a variety of other things. We use citizen feedback, obviously. City Council mission and priorities guide everything that we do, so we want the CIP to align to that as well. We have a prioritization scoring matrix that we use for individual projects to determine what gets in, and obviously council policy direction guides what we do, primarily by setting the revenue capacity of the CIP. Okay, next slide. So let me talk a little bit about our prioritization model. Again, this is our way to interject some objectivity into what otherwise could be maybe a subjective operation, and that is to provide a score for each project. Community investment plan alignment is in our prioritization model. Again, we look at that on every single project, and that has a pretty significant influence on the prioritization score of that project. Item number 2 also may be of interest. We like to do everything strategic. We like to have plans for everything. So if a project is associated with a planning process, that also significantly increases the prioritization score of a project and influences whether it's incorporated into the CIP or not. Next slide, please. So this is the pie chart that shows you where our dollars come from, and next I'll show you where they go. The takeaway on this one is about 1/3 of our CIP is generated from water and sewer revenues. And as you'll see in a minute, about 1/3 of our expenditures are for water and sewer. Another 1/3, roughly, of our CIP is from what I would characterize as local tax dollars, which is geo at large property taxes and local sales tax dollars, the 2 slices at the 10 to maybe 1 o'clock position on the pie chart. And finally, the other 1/3 is everything else, a variety of other funding sources, federal funds, state funds, donations, airport funds, things of that nature. Okay, next slide. So this is where we spend our money. Again, if we get 1/3 of our revenue from water and sewer, we spend about 1/3 of our revenue on water and sewer projects. Particularly in this CIP is the BNR project, the sewer biological nutrient removal project, huge project. We also have about $300 million worth of special assessment projects in the CIP. That's just a guess. You know, we put in $30 million a year. We honestly don't know whether it's going to be $10 million or $30 million. But $30 million is our amount we put each year. That's going to influence our prioritization scores, which I'll talk about in a second, so just keep that $300 million in mind. But other than water and sewer, we're going to spend, maybe we got public safety, public facilities. Our street network is going to be another $300 or $400 million or so, but just a variety of little pieces there. Okay, next slide. Okay, this slide is probably more for the benefit of the city council, but this basically shows how affordable the debt load is in this CIP. Now, if you're a banker, they look at what your debt service is compared to your income. We do a similar thing. That's what this is showing you. The only difference is our ratio that's acceptable is probably a heck of a lot higher than your average banker's ratio would be. We like to keep that ratio below 67%. In other words, we don't want to spend more than 67% of our income on debt service. We shoot for about 50-50, but we want to definitely keep it below 67. And the takeaway is that the black line there is below the blue line, which means that our CIP is affordable by our metric. Okay, next slide. So the next two slides are the most important two for your purposes probably. This is the analysis that Stephen did for us, which we sincerely appreciate. This shows that roughly a third of our CIP is in each of the three priority categories of the community investments plan. But I will point out that the expand what we have categories skewed just a little bit because that's where that $300 million worth of special assessments fits in. And 300 million on a 2 billion base is what, roughly 14-15%. So I would tell you about half of the percentage that we have in the third priority expand area is due to our special assessment program. So next slide, please. Now this slide shows very similar thing. This is going to break it down by prioritization. Takeaway is over 80% of what we're doing is in the very high priority area. And I looked, and last year when I presented to you about a year ago, we were at 80.4%. So in other words, we're very, very consistent when we develop our CIP on having projects aligned to the very high priority area. I would tell you, I'm just going to make a prediction. Next year, it's going to be even more than 80, I'm going to predict, and that's because the freeway component there is probably going to be diminished, and that's in the low medium. So I'll check it out, but I'm just going to make a prediction right now that next year will be above 80.6%. Okay, next slide. Okay, pavement maintenance, obviously that's a maintenance activity. $163 million in this CIP for pavement maintenance. This is not all road projects. This is strictly contractual pavement maintenance that the city is going to do, overlays and things of that nature. So $163 million. That's roughly 10% of our CIP, or a little less. In other words, this is a huge priority for the city council, maintaining our roads. That's basically, maybe aside from public safety, this is the number one thing that we hear about from our residents. Okay, next slide. Again, this is centered around our mission, and we have four goal areas. We want to keep people safe. We want to grow the economy. We want to have conditions for living well, and we want to have a dependable infrastructure. That's what the title of this slide references, in case I didn't mention that. So what do we want to do to make Wichita more livable? Here's a few examples. We want to improve South Lakes Park down on the southwest side of town. May not resonate with most of us in the room, but we want to build a pickleplex, which if you're a younger person might mean more to you than if you're an older person like me, but apparently that pickleball is the hot thing, and we want to build a pickleplex, which we think will generate economic activity in that corner, and maybe even regional or national pickleball tournaments, apparently. We'll see.
It's old people that like to play pickleball.
Oh, is it? Okay, well.
It's a big deal.
Less strenuous.
I'm not making any judgments. All I know is I know nothing about it. So McAdams facility, as you know, we had a master plan for McAdams. We spent a lot of money in McAdams, made a ton of improvements, League 42, and we've also improved the pool there. Now it's time to focus on the recreational facility, so we have $10 million scheduled for that. LW Clapp Park, as you know, used to be a golf course. We have a master plan for that as well, and we have about $10 million programmed for phase one of the master plan improvements for that. And finally, branch libraries, again, another planning process that we've had for several years. This will renovate our branch libraries. We obviously built the advanced learning library a couple years ago. This is designed to enhance our branches based on some surveys we did on what our customers wanted our branches. Westlink will be by far the largest component of this. Okay, next slide. Public safety, again, I mentioned that's probably our highest priority, right up there, street maintenance, so we obviously have a bunch of money allocated towards public safety. Again, this is based on planning processes, specifically fire. We'll do a fire optimization study and try to figure out strategically where our station should go. So we have about 20 million for fire stations, about 30 million for police stations. We get a lot of money in for fire trucks and other equipment. Okay, next slide. Drainage, I probably showed you the exact same slide last year. I don't remember, but I probably did. Bleckley Street, technically Dry Creek over by the VA in East Wichita, is by far the highest priority for drainage improvements. Now, the good news is we restructured our ERU rate in the stormwater utility a couple, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, something like that. So we have the capacity to fund a lot of this project with cash, and we'll issue some debt, but it's gonna be a huge project. I'm not even sure that we've totally designed it, so I don't even know that we exactly know what the improvements are gonna be. But the bottom line is there's funding in this CIP to attempt to address the Bleckley Street challenges. Okay, next slide. Calendar, obviously this is, we're towards the end of the calendar. The manager actually released his CIP on July 20th with a presentation here for the city council. I visited with the advanced plan subcommittee, about 2 weeks ago? And today, obviously, I'm visiting with you all. And then finally, next Tuesday, we will ask the city council to adopt this CIP and our operating budget. Okay, next slide. Just a reminder, it's available online. It's available at the public libraries. I think Mary sent you a link to it. And you could always come up to our offices on the 12th floor, and we'd be happy to show you a copy of it. I think that may be my last slide.
Are we allowed in City Hall on the 12th floor?
You know, we extend a extra special invitation to you, Mr. Chairman. That's all I have. I appreciate your time. Hopefully I was brief, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Do we have any questions? I think you did well in your presentation.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
You bet. Mr. Warren.
Move that we confirm that there's a finding that the City of Wichita Capital Improvement Program conforms to the Community Investment Plan and the goals contained therein as required by Kansas law.
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Warren, second by Ms. Foster, to take the recommended action presented in the staff report. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. We are adjourned.
Chuck, did you memorize that?